The night sky fills the city, and the sound of crickets chirping is the only sound that echoes. Inside the house, someone keeps clicking the mouse incessantly. He has an action figure with generous and beautiful attributes of a female figure. The young man is playing and asks the healer to do something. The situation is tough and he needs help as soon as possible. His dedication and effort are so intense that the mouse might not survive. Even the keyboard is not spared. He is too immersed in the game and he doesn't notice the bluish glow emanating from one of the keys. The virtual enemy he was facing was finally defeated, making him celebrate. The game congratulates him for the result, showing a victory message. His virtual buddies are also happy because they believe they belong to the best guild in that game. One of them thanks the leader, as they were the first to defeat that new boss. Another buddy thanks him as well, looking forward to the next day's mission. The low-level mage is grateful for being taken along, even though she wasn't very useful. Amid all those compliments, the boy feels happy to be recognized by his virtual friends. The truth is, he laments not being that popular in real life too. Soon, reality hits him like a brick to the head. He is in his dark room alone. That sense of accomplishment fades as he realizes that is not his real life. He is not dedicated to his studies, he is not tall, he is shy, smelly, has pimples, liver cirrhosis despite being a teetotaler, one leg longer than the other, and is almost blind. He also wishes he could be the center of attention, but it's a shame that in real life, he doesn't know how to level up. This makes him daydream several times throughout the day. All he wanted was to be a hero, with a body sculpted by hard work and recognized by his peers. But what he really wanted was to be pursued by beautiful women. So he imagines what it would feel like to be desired, and he wouldn't refuse any woman, for there would be enough nerd friends for everyone. That would definitely be a wonderful life to live. Distracted in his daydreams, he noticed someone was messaging him in the game. It's the new mage who joined the guild recently. Since they had already cleared the dungeon, he couldn't imagine the reason for her contact. She is suggesting they meet in real life, which left him quite excited. It didn't take long for excitement to be the only thing visible on his face. However, soon his happiness fades and he starts thinking about possible problems. It could be an old man wanting to molest him. This is definitely a repulsive scenario for him, but he recognizes that he shouldn't dwell only on the worst case scenarios. Besides, he has no money and doesn't look good, so it doesn't make sense for him to be a target. And if he really doesn't want to be alone for the rest of his life, he will have to do something eventually. So they scheduled to meet on Saturday at the city park. This made him so anxious that his shout echoed audibly through the night. The noise was so loud that a neighbor woke up and yelled at him as it was already late at night. The days passed and Saturday arrived. The little yellow alarm clock rang incessantly. With the noise, the boy wakes up and turns off the clock. Properly dressed, he takes the first step outside his house. Spring makes the trees look so beautiful around the area. He had finally arrived at the agreed place, the city park. He just needed to cross the street, moistening his fingertips with his tongue. He adjusted his bangs in an improvised way. He even gave a final touch to the bouquet of flowers he was holding. His bow tie is perfectly symmetrical. Despite feeling anxious, he hopes that from now on he will become a new man. The pedestrian signal started beeping. He can't describe what he feels, whether it's anxiety or nervousness, but he knows that the closer he gets, the faster his heart beats. This reminded him of the times he was bullied at school. He wanted to be brave, but he also wanted to run. The sun is shining beautifully, and the trees are blossoming. He hopes the date will be just like in his dreams. Trying to be realistic, he accepts that he should already be happy just for having the opportunity. But as he thought, he got distracted by the signal, and as he started crossing, it was already red. However, he didn't notice this. Taking his passionate steps across the street, he fails to see what's happening around him. Some people even start shouting, trying to warn him. A truck driver initiates a sudden brake. The rubber of the tires is pushed to the limit to maintain the stop. The truck driver tries to honk while his vehicle continues to advance dangerously across the crosswalk. Everything happened too fast, and the collision was inevitable. The sound of plastic breaking and bones shattering filled the air. Several meters away from the vehicle, his body lay motionless. Someone approached in shock, trying to provide some help, but the extent of the injuries was irreversible. People started gathering and someone tried to call for help. The harsh scene brought that small part of the city to a standstill. There was nothing else he could perceive, only a sudden calm. It was as if time had stopped. But he knew that everything he had dreamed of was now gone. Besides being good at games, he hadn't done anything remarkable in life, nothing he could be proud of. Fatigue was now all he felt flooding his being. After the darkness came a light and an image from the system. He didn't know what was happening or what he had logged into. He asked what voice that was, but it said it was his system and thought he had already figured things out by now. But all he knew was that he had been hit by a truck, and it said that's why he was reincarnating. He imagined he was dreaming, and the system said it needed to finish talking, which made him start shouting, thinking it was a dream, trying to wake up. The system finally said it was fed up. Continuing, it said he had reincarnated into a new world and that he should accept it. He wanted to know if he could refuse. But the system said that if he completed all the missions, he could reincarnate back into his original world, and he said he would do it immediately. It told him not to rush as it wouldn't be over in a day or two, and that he needed to get used to his new body. The boy noticed his hands were missing. saying there was a puddle of water in front of him and asked him to look at it as an image is worth 1,000 words. Trying to move, he noticed he was hopping. The water was as clear as a mirror. Scattered across the ground, there were several snails. Finally, the boy saw his reflection. It gave him an enormous emotional shock. He was taking time to process it, but he had become a mushroom. After seeing himself, he hopped away. He couldn't understand why he had become a mushroom. The snails looked at him suspiciously. Looking at them in terror, he wanted to believe that all of this was just a dream. Those snails were too strange, and they were chewing grass like ruminants. The only sound there was the sound of chewing. The chewing became a cruel mantra. They chewed and chewed the grass non-stop, a disturbing and haunting sound in that new world. The little mushroom was too frightened. After that impression, the system welcomed him to brave mainland. But it was too much, and he seemed to be in shock. Trying to console him, the system said it was indeed hard to accept everything that was happening. But there was no time to lose. The game had begun, and it was going to place the information directly into his mind. He couldn't understand anything. But now a whirlwind of information was flooding into him. That land was full of magic and wonders, with various regions, and it was known as Brave Mainland. In ancient times, monsters and humans cooperated. The latter were responsible for manual labor, and humans gifted with magic helped monsters live and prosper. In those days, learning was mutual, until one day, things changed. The demon lord Golem broke the peace and started attacking humans, attracting several monsters to his cause as they believed themselves superior. This also united humans under banners. Following the king's orders, it began to subjugate the monsters. Legends say that the 6 most powerful ones united to seal Golem. But because he was so powerful, his body was separated into 6 pieces and placed in different locations. Thus, they were scattered randomly across the land. One of them is the Castle of Time. Another is the Pentachrome of the Desert, the Sunken World, the Stormy Pastures, the Source of the Volcano, and lastly, the Land of the Dead. After all this, the monsters and humans could not return to their previous state. And even with Golem sealing, some of his followers still roamed freely. They constantly brought destruction to the land, trying to bring Golem back to life. That's why he was reincarnated, to prevent Lord Golem from returning and destroying the land. Golem's followers had already begun preparations to break his seals. Time was running out. After the explanation, the system wanted to know if the player had any questions. He wanted to confirm if by preventing Golem's return, he would be able to go back to his world. And once again, the system confirmed it. This only made him more upset, as he wasn't one of the 6 most powerful. He was just a mushroom. Hopping in anger, he ended up slipping. The feeling of imbalance ran through his body. His mushroom body had fallen to the ground. The system asked him to wait and get used to the body, but it hoped he would learn quickly, because his first mission was about to begin. The boy made a tremendous effort to stand up. That only ended up leaving him exhausted. He complained to the system, saying that he could at least be a creature with limbs, but instead, he became a mushroom. Using all his strength, he tried to get up again. But he fell again and was already feeling hopeless about achieving anything if he couldn't even stand up. The system said the game would continue, whether the player was prepared or not. His first mission was to survive, and the reward would be either body toughness or limbs. Time began to count down, 3 seconds remaining, and the snails started fleeing. One of them hid in a bush. Another climbed a tree vine. The boy remained lying on the ground. The mission started. He had 59 minutes to survive, and the system said they were coming. A portal began to glow from within. Terrified, the boy wondered who these people arriving were. A vortex formed inside the portal. The countdown finally reached 0. It was soon possible to see a boot stepping out of it. A crowd of children entered, seeking destruction, as they wanted to complete the requirements to change classes and become brave. His small body started trembling with fear. The terror made him manage to get out of there, hopping a few times. Hiding behind the tree, he imagined that if they came there to kill monsters, he was in danger. A little boy wielded his stick, which granted him an additional attack point. With one strike, he sent a small snail flying. Grabbing the clawless-lined stick from his hand was worth it, as he managed to defeat a red snail in a single blow. Another boy removed the snail from its shell. Its shell trembled on the ground. Crushing one with a rock, the boy said it was better than his friend's stick. A green snail tried to escape that carnage. It tried to use all the speed it had, but it ended up being caught by a hand. It looked back in terror. A sweet girl asked if it would be her companion when she became a beast tamer. Filled with hope, it let a smile escape. But she needed ingredients to change classes first. The snail was gutted alive by the girl. She stored its shell. Only 9 more were needed. That was a common storage pot with a capacity for 10 items. The mushroom watched all that, realizing that from the monster's perspective, humans were the true monsters. Unexpectedly, something happened in the garden. A boy was thrown against a rock. That blow ended his life. He was immediately teleported to the beginner's village. He lost his stick, as well as 100 experience points. The other children looked at what had happened. That was a level 3 Papa Snail riding a skateboard and having little patience with troublemakers. This one was different from the others, and the mushroom wondered why he could see its information and level. The system said that was his evaluation ability, and to understand it better, he should check his own status. That shell was one of the rarest for this task, and all the children wanted it. They wanted to kill it together and then decide who would keep the shell. But the children were unable to subdue it. One by one, they were defeated. Little by little, they disappeared, until the last of the weak ones fell to the ground. One of them remained behind and thanked the newcomers for weakening it, as now he would kill it. But the Papa Snail was furious beyond measure. That level 4 student sought revenge ever since he lost to the snail. The Papa Snail charged into battle with all its might. They were about to clash violently. Taking the opportunity, it bit the boy's foot. Its bite was fierce and impactful, but the boy merely shook his wild boar leather boots, which increased his defense by 5 points. The boy had prepared for 2 months, and the snail was without its skateboard, its speed weapon, and now with his sword, he was unbeatable for it. Tired, the snail spat but remained resolute. The mushroom knew that monster did it to protect its family, so he began cheering out loud for the Papa Snail. But it was to no avail. It was already dead. It was difficult but expected since it was the rarest ingredient. He finally obtained the Papa Snail's shell. That gave the boy 20 experience points. With that item, he could finally become a knight. In the face of all this, the mushroom trembled with fear. He had no hope of surviving and hoped someone would save him. A boy advanced cautiously through the forest. He heard something in those bushes, and it could be a family of snails. He gently parted the bushes with his hands. What they found there wasn't a snail, but rather a mushroom. They screamed in terror at their discovery. The mushroom was also terrified for having been found. It was his end. He was sure they would kill him. But the boys immediately fled, warning the others that there was a monster mushroom there. So he wondered if they were really afraid of him. The system confirmed it and instructed him to check his own attributes. Deciding to give it a chance, he commanded the attribute panel to open. He was a level 5 mushroom with a resurrection coin, 36 health, 22 mana, and he was a monster. Being level 5, he was the most powerful being there, because the strongest after him was a level 4 boy. A bit more enthusiastic, he wanted to see what abilities he had. He had 2, Appraisal and Mushroom Charge. Appraisal was what allowed him to see others' information, so the charge must be an attack since it didn't consume mana. Even though they were basic abilities, they gave him a chance to completely dominate the beginner's village. He thought he was playing on an impossible difficulty level, but now he believed everything would be easy. With the roles reversed, he began searching for his victims. He spotted some children killing snails. It was time for them to witness his power. Determined, he executed his attack ability. He managed to get 2 of the children. This made them collapse unconscious on the ground. The boy and the girl vanished from the area. The mushroom not only found it easy, but he also gained 5 experience points for each of them. But the other boy appeared, wondering what had happened. The mushroom turned to him maliciously. This wasn't the time for mushroom monsters. The boy was terrified. He climbed up a vine to try and escape. Fearful, he climbed the rope as high as he could. A monster of such a high level wasn't supposed to be there. Looking up, the mushroom didn't believe the height would protect the boy. Concentrating his strength, he jumped. His head managed to hit the vine. He tried again, only hitting the vine. This time, he attempted to grab it with his teeth. Not having hands was complicated, and it seemed he would have to wait for the boy to come down. He moved away from the platform, hopping. Then he entered the forest bushes. He continued hopping, searching for more targets. But a rock was thrown at him. It hit his head directly. Not only did he feel the pain of the impact, but he also lost 2 health points. Now he wanted to know who the reckless one was who had attacked the king of the forest. The boy had gathered with his friends. The strongest among them was at level 3. The boy called his friends, which could give him more experience, but it was also much more dangerous. He firmly leaped on the ground. That mushroom wasn't a common mushroom. In front of the boys, he executed his move. The mushroom charge was now underway. The shield of the chubby boy granted 8 defense points, and he managed to withstand the attack. But his shield broke, and he asked his friends to form a formation. The boy with the glasses and the girl would go on one side, and the one with the helmet on the other. The 2 began running away. Meanwhile, the boy with the helmet threw another rock at the mushroom. It was a critical hit, taking away 4 health points. Feeling that pain, he was determined not to forgive them. On the other side, more rocks were being prepared. The boy with glasses and the girl threw a barrage of stones. This strategy was also used by the boy with the helmet. Those rocks began hitting the mushroom. That was definitely hurting him. Each stone took away 2 health points, and his attack was still recharging. As soon as the cooldown ended, he attacked them once again. The chubby boy grabbed another shield. The mushroom was close to hitting them, but the chubby boy managed to protect them at the last moment. Wielding a sword, the boy with glasses charged for the attack. The other friends cheered for him to defeat the monster, but the mushroom managed to dodge the attack. Even though he was slashed on the tip of his head, it was an intense and excruciating pain. The strength of the weak united can overpower the strong. He had seen this before when he played with his friends. The tanks absorb the damage while the others attack. If he doesn't attack them all at once, he will end up perishing. He was surrounded and the children were oppressing him. With almost no health left, he began vomiting from the pain. Finally, he collapsed to the ground after so much beating. He was on the verge of losing consciousness. The children gathered, checking if he was truly defeated. Then they started celebrating for having defeated a monster mushroom. However, the girl noticed that she had received any experience points yet and asked if her friends had. The mushroom pretended to be dead on purpose to have them all within his reach. Enraged, he began his counterattack. That gave him enough experience to level up. With the children defeated, his body began to glow. Now he had 47 health and 30 mana points. All the pain and injuries he had vanished with the level up. He felt wonderful and powerful. But being invincible was far too lonely. He was confident that if he stayed there, he could level up to the maximum level and complete all the missions. While he was daydreaming about the future, a lightning bolt struck beside him. He was almost hit, even though the sky was clear and bright. He finally realized what was happening. The adventurer said that the mage had recently changed classes, and even so, he managed to miss the attack. He was level 18. The mission mentioned a monster causing chaos among the novices, but it was just a mushroom. The level 17 archer didn't care, she just wanted to finish this quickly and get a reward. The level 12 warrior said it was nostalgic to return there with his two seniors. That level gap meant only one thing to him: death. The mage conjured a ball of lightning in one of his hands. He hurled the projectile toward the mushroom. Faced with the imminent impact, the mushroom was terrified. He barely dodged the full attack, but the top of his head was burned. It passed through the bushes, destroying them. That was enough to take away 14 health points. Magic-using players weren't supposed to be in a beginner's area. Behind him, he could see that the energy ball had even destroyed the wood of the trees. He had no chance against this group. The best he could do was flee. Concentrating all his strength, he planned to use his charge as a means of escape. He leaped far away from his attackers. This behavior surprised the players, as the monster knew when it needed to flee. The warrior told the others not to worry because he would handle it. He had recently learned a new ability and wanted to test it on the mushroom. Using his axe, he made a slash in the ground that extended toward the monster. Then a large block of earth emerged suddenly, blocking the mushroom's escape. He hit head-on, losing 10 health points in the process. The system warned him that his health had dropped below half and that he needed to be cautious. The impact's force caused him to spin in the air. In the distance, the archer prepared a single shot to end the creature's life. With him in her sights, she fired her arrow. It hit the mushroom precisely. That piercing attack caused him to lose another 23 health points. With that, he had no more health points left. The arrow that struck him went through, destroying the earthen wall that was there. His body fell to the ground, unresponsive. The system informed him that this was the end of the game. His body kept bouncing from the impact, until it lost its momentum and remained still. The warrior praised his friend's precision, saying that she would soon be recruited by the Archers Guild. She felt flattered by the compliment and said that if she were sincerely invited, she would accept the offer. The mage told them to stop the idle chat and collect the mushroom's body to receive their reward. The system wanted to know if he intended to use his resurrection coin. To continue living, he had no other choice to make. His body began to glow once again. He learned a new ability, Spore Explosion. Besides, his health was fully restored. As soon as they approached, he released the cloud of spores. The cloud was immense, covering a large part of the area. The mage hadn't imagined a mushroom could have that ability, as he had never seen it before. From within the fog, he used his charge again, but his movement was detected by the archer. She immediately alerted the others that the monster was trying to escape. They quickly moved to prevent his escape. The mushroom continued hopping to flee from his attackers, but the distance between them was closing. He needed to think of something immediately. So he asked the system how much time was left to complete the first mission. There were a little over 3 minutes remaining. He needed to stay alive until then for the mission rewards to help him survive. Once again, a lightning bolt began to descend from the sky. The impact was too close, and he wondered if his pursuers had already reached him. His dodge caused him to slide along the ground. He just wanted to understand how he had been caught so quickly, even after blocking their vision. He finally noticed there was a mark above his head. It was the hunter's tracking ability. The archer's skill, which had been placed on her arrow. The stronger the archer, the better the tracking and duration. He didn't know how he was still alive, but after being hit by her, he wouldn't be able to escape. The warrior charged forward, hoping to finish off the mushroom quickly. Reacting in time, the mushroom avoided the worst outcome. But his dodge was clumsy, and he lost his balance. He had already used his resurrection coin. He couldn't die again. While leaning against the tree, more attacks approached. Wind blades sliced through the wood effortlessly. The mushroom was injured, losing 18 health points. He definitely didn't want to die that way, so he used his spore cloud once more. The mist covered them again, obscuring their vision. But the archer told him that this strategy was useless. She could still see the mark and prepared her arrow. Once marked, she could hit him even with her eyes closed. Her hand relaxed, and the arrow was released from the bow. It violently passed through the trees, destroying them until it reached the mushroom. Once again, he had been hit by her. This time, he lost 28 health points. In critical condition, his speed was reduced by 80%, and he could no longer consume stamina as he couldn't recover. The players approached the fallen mushroom. A countdown was ticking down. It was a special monster since it had managed to use its abilities to hide. Even so, it wasn't enough. The mage prepared to deliver a fatal blow, and the countdown reached 1 second. The mission had been completed, as the time had run out. In the forest, some birds suddenly flew away in fright. The archer said their time was up. The mage mentioned that he hadn't been there for so long that he had forgotten. Hearing this, the warrior wanted to know what was happening. A large teleportation circle appeared above their heads. The mage screamed desperately for his companions to run away. A small mushroom began emerging from the circle. Soon, other mushrooms started to appear as well. It was almost completely out. The sky was then filled with the descent of those creatures. Countless of them were falling from the sky. The warrior didn't want to flee and thought the mage was spouting nonsense. Using his axe, he managed to take down some of them. He couldn't miss out on all those experience points falling like gifts from the sky. He used one of his abilities, and with its reach, he managed to kill even more mushrooms. Their bodies started to spread across the forest floor. It was like an all-you-can-eat buffet of experience. The mage told him he was foolish and didn't understand the waves of creatures in that place. They needed to leave immediately. The warrior called the mage a coward, saying he was gaining experience too, and if the mage wanted to leave, he could go. The archer mentioned that there was an enchantment in this village and that he wouldn't die there, so they could relax. They abandoned him, saying that if anything happened to him, it was entirely his responsibility. Watching them flee, he called them idiots for passing up such an opportunity, since he would never lose to such weak monsters. But from the portal, a massive mushroom began to emerge. The warrior believed it would just be a large number of those useless ones. However, he quickly realized the shadow of the figure that appeared. It was definitely much larger than he was. That mushroom had a large mustache on its face. It was also dressed in a royal cape. It was the level 60 Mushroom King, appearing every 7 days in search of a long-lost mushroom secret. The warrior screamed in despair as there was nothing he could do. Then the Mushroom King fell upon him, crushing him. There, he began interacting with the other mushrooms. That warrior was no longer alive. His body was teleported back to the village. This death caused him to lose all the experience of the past few days, but the other two just wanted to escape quickly, as they also couldn't do anything against the Mushroom King. He looked at his tiny subjects. Injured and exhausted, he thought that those monsters appeared because of him. The king prepared to draw his sword. Pointing it upwards, he rallied the small ones. They all started jumping as if in response to his speech. The small mushrooms celebrated. The king was also jumping with them. The vision of the main mushroom began to grow weaker and blurrier. He didn't want to be ignored. He was also a mushroom and wanted their help. Before he could lose consciousness, a pig appeared. All he wanted now was to be helped. A campfire burned calmly, illuminating the place softly. It seemed to be in a covered area, like a cave. He weakly opened his eyes. Finally, he was awake after everything that had happened. He hadn't died, but he had no idea where he could be. However, he soon noticed that there were pieces of mushroom all over the place. Not far from there, an animal was chewing on something. He immediately thought that this pig had killed all those mushrooms. The beast continued its meal. Suddenly, it turned around to his horror. Terrified, he averted his gaze to avoid attracting the creature's attention. With that, the pig went back to munching on whatever it was devouring. Maybe he had been dragged there so the pig could consume him later. He needed to escape while the animal was distracted. But as he tried to get up, he noticed something. He was missing the lower part of his body. It must have been the pig's doing. It had eaten him. The pig started approaching him. Its tail wagged excitedly at the situation. Knowing it was approaching, he thought about pretending to be dead so he could try to escape another time. Finally, the creature had arrived. He closed his eyes to avoid seeing the worst. The pig was there, staring at him intently. Its mouth started moving closer. The mushroom couldn't stop trembling. But instead of attacking, the pig regurgitated a bit of what it had eaten. The chewed-up mass landed on the mushroom's wounds. Immediately, his health began to recover. He wondered if those pieces of the bodies had been placed there to help him heal. As the pig moved away, he kept his eyes shut. The pig nudged the mushroom's head gently with its snout. It seemed the pig was showing affection for him. The pig was definitely caring for the mushroom. After that, it lay down next to him, though he still refused to open his eyes. Eventually, the pig fell asleep beside him. A small opening in the ceiling allowed moonlight to filter in. The pig woke from its slumber, alert to its surroundings. The mushroom was no longer by its side. Realizing this, it began sniffing the air. It looked into the cave, disheartened, but it found the scent trail. Trusting its instincts, it followed the trail through the cave. As it advanced, it remembered something. This made it rush back along its path. It hurriedly moved its little feet. All of this was done to put out the campfire. The flames had now been extinguished. The mushroom did everything it could to continue its escape. If it had to die, it would rather fall to a boss's hands than a pig's mouth. As it fled, the ground trembled and it wondered if it was an earthquake. Looking back, it realized it was something worse. The pig was chasing after him relentlessly. The sight made him panic, unsure how to defend himself. It was getting closer and closer. No matter how hard he tried, he knew he wouldn't be able to outrun the pig. As a last resort, he used his spore explosion to obscure its vision. Faced with the spore cloud, the pig paused. The scene seemed to make it even happier. Patiently, it flared its nostrils. Then it started inhaling all the spores from the air. In a few seconds, the spores were gone, and the mushroom could be seen fleeing. That was definitely what it had wanted to find. As he fled, the mushroom was terrified again, fearing he would be eaten. He ran as fast as he could from the love-struck pig. Having no other options, he called for help from the system. The system responded promptly. What he wanted to know now was if his previous mission had been completed. It had, and the system asked if he wanted to claim his reward. Knowing this, he said he wanted to receive it as soon as possible. To do so, he needed to choose between the rewards. toughness, or limbs. This left him uncertain about which would be more useful. Having limbs would be very interesting. With them, he could attack the pig more effectively, and it would be more efficient if he wanted to run away. Having limbs would be more useful, as he would have a wider range of movements. The system asked if he had made his choice. Decided, he said he wanted limbs. His body began to glow. Protrusions started to form on his sides. Soon he had 2 small arms. The same process began at the bottom. His eyes continued to glow. His transformation was complete. Now he had a pair of feet to stand on, and tiny arms around his body. This was the moment to use them and keep running. But with his tiny legs, he could barely run. His speed was pitiful. Those little bumps shouldn't even be called limbs. Still, he continued his escape, terrified, unsure of what he had done to anger the pig. She sped up toward him. Getting closer, she leaped excitedly. With her little hooves, she managed to grab hold of the mushroom, causing both of them to roll on the ground. The creature planted its feet on the ground. Beside her, the mushroom lay there, unresponsive. With the chase over, the piglet licked him gently. Overwhelmed with fear, he only wished she would end it quickly as an act of mercy. The caring piglet licked him incessantly. He opened his eyes and used his appraisal ability. The process to learn more about the creature began. At level 10 and with 50 attack points, she could go into a frenzy if she became too hungry. Seeing her stats, he asked the system to show his attributes. At level 6, he was significantly weaker than her. His appraisal ability had improved, but the gap between them was too great, and he couldn't imagine being able to get away from her. The piglet seemed to hear something. She then started staring intently at the cave's exit. Her posture indicated that something suspicious was happening. Focusing, her nostrils picked up a scent. She immediately realized what was going on. She began circling as if trying to communicate something to the mushroom. Not knowing what was happening, he thought that if she wasn't going to eat him, he would leave now. Suddenly, pieces of the cave began to fall. The entire structure started to shake violently. It could only be an earthquake. Outside, some creatures were in a crater. They moved with incredible speed. Their agility was so great that they were hard to see. The force of their steps caused the entire structure to tremble. A stalactite began to shake excessively. Its tip broke off, falling toward the ground. This happened with several others, making them extremely dangerous. The piglet headed for the exit, and the mushroom followed. He didn't want to be left behind and begged the pig to wait for him, terrified of being hit by a falling rock. His plea touched her deeply. The piglet changed direction, willing to help the mushroom. She ran to reach him. Nimbly, she dodged a falling stalactite. The impact on the ground was strong. If it had hit her, it would have been serious. But her agility was simply admirable. Her determination allowed her to reach the mushroom. Approaching him, she nudged him with the tip of her snout. With a single movement, she tossed him up. Now he was on her back as if he had a mount. With his new appendages, he tried to hold on as best as he could. Her speed was almost too much for him to keep his grip. Effortlessly, the piglet avoided all the obstacles while the mushroom struggled to keep himself from getting sick. The exit was in front of them, getting closer and closer. She gave one final push with her legs. Her powerful leap allowed them to escape before the exit was buried by rocks. If they had taken any longer, it would have been trapped inside. Finally, she landed on the ground outside. Both were safe, but the mushroom was out of breath. Where the entrance to that part of the cave once was, there were now only rocks and a cloud of dust in the air. Above, the peculiar figures gathered. They were also pigs, like her. Curious, the mushroom wanted to know if they were friends of his mount. Wild boars, level 18, powerful and aggressive, but they preferred to flee when faced with a greater threat. One of them stomped the ground with its hoof. The others formed a corridor with a bonfire at the center. The fire burned atop the head of the one who seemed to be the leader. Faced with this, they stared at each other intently. The mushroom could tell that this monster was level 35, but his analysis ability was still too low to get more information about it. After a brief standoff, the piglet turned her back on the boars. One of them was outraged by this behavior, but the leader let out an intimidating grunt. The other boar understood that he shouldn't do anything. They merely watched from above as she walked away. Following a path separate from her herd, the mushroom and the piglet had no idea what awaited them on this adventure. In the cave, she attended to his wounds, and now she had saved him from the cave. The piglet didn't seem to have any hostile intentions toward him. She continued sniffing the ground. Her snout searched for something. Calmly and attentively, they advanced through the meadows. He asked the system where they were. They were in Crescent Bay, east of the Tempest Grasslands, 200 kilometers from the starting village. That was definitely a generous distance, but the mushroom had no idea how he had ended up there. Perhaps the pig had used a teleportation ability when he lost consciousness. Something happened that put the piglet on high alert. A sticky, slimy mass rose into the air. It quickly moved toward them, but the piglet managed to dodge. Once again, she evaded, and the mushroom remained steady on her back. She was truly agile, and those attacks posed no threat. But she couldn't keep dodging forever. The hostile creature that tried to strike them retreated back to its hiding spot. The prairie returned to its calm state. There was danger on all sides, and the mushroom was fortunate that the piglet was always on high alert. And indeed, she was scanning the surroundings and scents. From within the grass, the monster that attacked them began to reveal itself. It was an enormous toad trying to devour them. Its size frightened the mushroom, who immediately used his appraisal ability. Bull toad, level 11, voracious and needs to eat the equivalent of his weight every day, preferring prey it can swallow in a single gulp. With its position revealed, it locked eyes with the piglet and the mushroom. They stared at each other briefly after that first encounter. Once again, it tried to catch the piglet with its sticky tongue, but she dodged with ease. Unfortunately, the mushroom wasn't as lucky and was captured, which made him scream for help. She noticed her companion was in trouble. This filled her with rage at what the toad had done. She charged furiously toward it. The toad prepared to swallow the mushroom, while the piglet advanced fiercely. As its tongue retracted, it could only focus on the prey it had already captured. It was getting closer to swallowing him whole. But beneath it, the piglet was making her move. Desperate, the mushroom considered using his spore explosion as a defense. However, the piglet's hooves were ready. With a powerful charge, she struck the toad, and it felt the impact. The pain caused its tongue to release the mushroom. He safely landed on the piglet's back, who was now very happy. This time, he was genuinely grateful for being saved by her once again. However, they were still not safe, and a slicing attack was approaching them. Sensing the danger, she jumped to avoid being hit. Looking back, they realized what they had narrowly escaped. The toad had been sliced entirely by that attack. Its pieces fell onto the prairie floor. Footsteps echoed, and they resembled those of an arthropod. The mushroom knew there was a more dangerous monster than the toad around. Near the toad's carcass, there was something similar to a praying mantis. It plunged one of its blades into the toad's flesh. Tearing off a piece, it began eating its prey right there. This was a blade mantis, level 19, the strongest of its kind and could cut through steel. Its defense and health points weren't impressive, but its attack was far too dangerous, boasting 280 points. While it ate, it wasn't entirely distracted and noticed there were more creatures nearby. With just the toad, it was already difficult. With this level 19 creature, acting rashly would mean they wouldn't make it out alive. The mantis calmly ate the piece of toad it held. Slowly, it sheathed its blade. The monster did this with the patience of a professional. Ready to attack, it widened the distance between its legs. Its stance was offensive, and its eyes were fixed on the piglet and the mushroom. If they were hit, it would be the end. The pig needed to be extremely cautious now. However, before it could act, a rock was thrown high into the sky. It flew high, distracting the mantis. As everything that goes up must eventually come down, the rock fell to the ground. They watched in surprise at what had just happened. That boulder seemed to have acted deliberately. What was left of the mantis lay beneath it. Its body was slowly absorbed, until nothing was left of it there. An opening slowly formed on the boulder, revealing a sinister-colored eye. It stood there, motionless in front of them. It was a boulder mushroom, level 26. They mimic rocks until their prey is close enough, posting good defense but being slow. The mushroom advised the piglet to back away slowly until they were no longer in the creature's line of sight. She followed his advice, moving slowly backward. The boulder remained still in the grass. Then it decided to return to hiding, transforming back into just another lone rock amidst the landscape. Continuing their journey, and the mushroom was